Hey, how we doing, brothers and sisters? We still live out there? I know it's snowing here in Boston tonight. I know it's cold. But if you want to feel the burn, we got to turn up the heat. And we're going to do that because I am so proud to be here with our next speaker. Brothers and sisters, she was warned. She was given an explanation. And nevertheless, she persisted. Our senior senator from Massachusetts is a working class champion. Senator Warren is an example of what it means to persist in the face of adversity and fight for what is right because it is right. Like Senator Bernie Sanders, her leadership is defined not only by the faith that we have in her, but by the hope that she has in each of us. It is my honor to introduce to you our senior senator from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Massachusetts. Oh man, am I glad to be here tonight. You know, this is my first chance here in Massachusetts to introduce my dear friend Bernie Sanders. It's gonna happen. But before I do that, I actually want to tell you a story about how Bernie and I met. It speaks volumes about both of us. Some of you know, I was a teacher, a researcher, and was doing work about what was happening to America's middle class. This is several years back. And I got an invitation to come to dinner in Washington, D.C., and I was told it would be with a lot of policy people. So I did exactly what you'd expect me to do. I showed up with a fistful of charts. I am a real dinner guest that, the dinner guest from hell, right? So I showed up with these charts and started talking about what was happening to hardworking families all across this country. And while there were folks who were interested and paid attention, there was this one guy with this bright white hair who said, what? And we got into it, back and forth and back and forth. It's like there was nobody else in the room. And that was the start with Bernie Sanders. So, my God. After that, we did road trips. We did more dinners in Washington. But I tell you, I learned something from watching him in a lot of different places over a very long time. And that is, Bernie Sanders fights for what's right, and he fights from the heart, and that's how we win. That's right. So, it is so fabulous to be with you tonight because I want to start with a huge thank you. And what the thank you is about is to commemorate an anniversary, a 1-week anniversary, and to say to everyone in this room and everyone around the country who got up and fought back the biggest assault on health care in this country and won. Yes. Can we give ourselves a round of applause? everybody about the story behind this, just a little bit about the story. You can kind of pick it up at different places. But I want to pick it up with the number of times that Donald Trump said during the campaign, on day one, on day one, we will repeal Obamacare. How many times the House Republicans voted to repeal Obamacare? And I want you to remember one thing, it didn't happen on day one. So the question has to be, why not? They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House. Why didn't it happen? It didn't happen because we got out there and fought back. That's right. In fact, just think about it this way, because I think this is the right way to think about it. They were just going to repeal. And had they repealed, the rest of us will be standing there with our begging bowls, hoping for crumbs in what little bits of health care they might permit Americans to have. That didn't happen because we got organized after the election, and what we started pushing is you can't repeal and run. That's for cowards. You got to repeal and replace. And then the consequence of that was, even ultimately, Donald Trump eventually picked that up, said you got to repeal and replace. And then once they had to start laying out their own health care plan, as Donald Trump said, who knew this was so complicated? Whoa. But that gave us time. And it gave us time to talk all around the country about health care and why health care matters to us. Why it is that we get out there and fight so that everyone in this country will have health care coverage. That is our goal. I start with a big thank you, but it's really the first point that I want to make. And that's the point that says we got to fight. We got to be in the fight. We got to be willing to go into the fight. We have to fight if we're going to win. On the day after the inauguration, I was here in Boston. How many people came down to Boston Common? Or went to a march in Washington, or went to one of the other marches here in the Commonwealth, somewhere in New England, all across the country. When I was headed to the march, I thought about the fact that the only way we're going to fight back is if we raise an army. And I thought, where are we going to find that army? Where's that army going to come from? And as we're pulling toward Copley Square, as we're pulling around toward Copley Square, we say, I saw people starting to walk toward the center, and I saw a man with a little girl up on his shoulders, and she was holding a hand-lettered sign, and it said, I fight like a girl. And I looked out and I said to myself, so do I, sweetie. Her sign had rainbows on it, it had horses on it, it had glitter on it, and I gotta tell you, that's the start of our army. That's right. We made history that day, and a lot of people held up their signs to show how we made history. The sign I think that was at least one of my favorites were the ones that said, thank you, Donald Trump, you have turned me into an activist. Yes, that's That's where our army will come from. Or the guy standing off to the side who had the hand-lettered cardboard sign that said, "I'm not a sign guy, but geez, we'll take them any way we can get them," right? Because here's the deal. We don't have the tools. The Republicans have the White House, they got the Senate, they got the House of Representatives, and the number of tools we've got down in Washington on our side are limited. But that means exactly one thing, and that is we ain't going to be able to do it by ourselves in Washington. It's going to take all of us to be in this fight. We want to fight back against what's going on down there. It takes all of us. Are you ready to be in that fight? Yes. Yep. So that was the first point I wanted to make, and that is we got to be in the fight. Second point I want to make, we can't shoot at everything that moves. Now, this is a lesson we got to watch, because we got to watch what's happening on the other side. We got to watch Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I hope a lot of you saw the movie Up. Donald Trump is like the guy who yells, "Squirrel." We can't be the golden retrievers that all turn that way. Can't do that. We can't. You want to be in a fight, you got to be effective. And that means we got to stay disciplined and focused on the issues that matter most to us. You know, I know. Donald Trump has talked about all those folks from Massachusetts who went over the border to vote illegally in New Hampshire. I think I even heard him say something about I drove the bus. You know, it's... Let it go. Just let it go. And the next time you do a fact check and find out he hadn't told the truth, that is no longer a newsflash. No, it's not. Because the real point is not who Donald Trump is. It's not what kind of person he is. The real point is what Donald Trump and the Republicans in Washington are doing. We stay focused on what they are doing to American families. We talk about it, we tweet about it, we stay focused on what they're doing, and we make it clear that these are people who said over and over and over they were going to get out and fight for working families. They were going to fight for those who are left behind. And look what they've done since they got to Washington. Donald Trump has assembled a team of billionaires and bankers. He's got... I'll give you a boo on that, yeah. He has got so many Goldman Sachs bankers now in the White House, they could open a branch office legally. They could do that now. Look at the people he's put together in his team. He's put to, Secretary of Education who doesn't believe in public education. Yeah. A Secretary of the Treasury who made his fortune foreclosing on families caught in the crisis. Boy, a director of the Environmental Protection Agency who doesn't believe in science. One after another, and make no mistake, this is not just Donald Trump. We got to be sure what we keep in our sights, and that is every Republican who voted to confirm those people. Fully culpable. They're a reason to get out there in 18 and hold them accountable. All of them. You bet. And What's happened? You know, we were able to fight them back on health care for now, although I always take a deep breath and remind myself when I'm celebrating that I have to remember one of the principal reasons it failed was that for many Republicans in the House, that health care bill was not brutal enough. So we have to remember that. But they've been busy. They've been busy. I would describe it as below the radar screen, but it's so crazy out there. Washington right now, you know, it's like a snowstorm and a tornado and a hurricane all happening at the same time. And in the meantime, the Republicans in Congress just keep passing one bill after another. They're called CRAs, where they're just rolling back regulations that were designed to protect the rest of us. So just keep in mind over just in the past few days, what they've done. One of the things they did is they've now made it so that corporations that kill or maim their employees won't actually have to keep records for 5 years on that. You know, I just want to make a point about this. I'm gonna channel my inner wonk here for a minute, but you actually do have to focus on why would you even do something like that? And the answer is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which Republicans like to tell lots of jokes about. They're the folks who actually come out and try to make sure that the workplace is safe. Occupational Safety and Health Administration has been given such generous resources from Congress that it actually can inspect every company for workplace safety once every 140 years. So they use those data to help make sure they're going to places where the most danger is, where people are getting killed, where people get maimed. And the Republicans just very, matter of fact, hey, another day in the big city, living large. And they just roll back that protection for our workers. Or how about earlier this week, when the Republicans said, hey, why not let your internet provider just sell your browsing history? Wow, I want to see somebody's browsing history on that one, right? Exactly right. Or what happened yesterday when the Republicans, again, passed another law that said basically the states can find ways to cut off funding for Planned Parenthood and other women's health clinics. Make no mistake, Donald Trump and the Republicans are working together. And what they're working together for is an extremist right-wing agenda, an agenda that works for billionaires, that works for giant corporations, that works for the fringe of their party, but it does not work for America, and that is why we're in this fight. Yep. So, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to talk about the things that matter most, and that is how Donald Trump and the Republicans are working together just to kick dirt in the faces of most of America. So that's the second part. The third part is we can't just talk about them. We got to talk about us. We got to talk about our values. We got to talk about why we're in this fight. We got to talk about why we get up early and why we stay up late. We got to talk about the things that move us. And I want to be clear with all of you. For me, this one is personal. I never thought I would end up in politics. This wasn't something on, my bucket list or my shopping list or any other list. For me, it really started. The reason I'm on this stage tonight is because of my second grade teacher, Mrs. Lee. Can we hear it for public school teachers? I lived in a family, we had a lot of bumps, but boy, When I went into that classroom in second grade, Mrs. Lee, she was the one. She had this gravelly voice, big bosom. She gave great hugs. I love Mrs. Lee. And I decided right then and there, someday, I was going to be a teacher too. That was my goal. But my family really was holding on by its fingernails, and we had a lot that went wrong, and by the time I was in high school, there was no chance. We couldn't afford application for college, much less what it was going to cost to go to college. And the story has lots of twists and turns, but it ends up with this fact, and that is I graduated from a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. And here's the deal. It opened a door for me. It gave me the chance to become, in my case, a special needs teacher. And one door led to other doors, and another door, and another door, and ultimately, here I am tonight, you're a United States Senator. But this truly is, for me, the heart of it. I grew up in an America that was investing in our kids. I grew up in an America that said, we're going to make college available to kids who work hard, who play by the rules. They're going to get a shot. I grew up in an America that was not perfect, but understand this about the America I grew up in. Every kid had a better than 90% chance that we would do better than our parents. That was the America that we invested in and we built. And today, that has been ripped away from us. And it has been ripped away from us by policies in Washington that have been driven by billionaires, that have been driven by giant corporations, that have been driven by those who say it is more important that they have tax cuts than that the rest of our kids get a chance for an education that they can afford. I stand here tonight ready to fight for an America that believes in the dignity of every human being. To fight for an America that believes in opportunity, not just for some of our children, but opportunity for all of our children. I stand here tonight to say that a country that now follows policies so that 70% of students who graduate from public universities have to borrow money to get there, and the federal government is making billions of dollars in profits off their back. That is obscene. And it is time to fight back, and that's why we're here. You bet. So, we get together. There's a reason we get together in person. We get together in person because it gives us a chance to remind ourselves together what it is that we fight for. It gives us a chance to affirm that we're in this fight, not just tonight, but tomorrow and the day after that and the week after that and the month after that and the year after that. It gives us a chance to say, we are in this fight because we believe in the America that we can build for all of us. That's why we're in this fight. So I just want to say this. I want to remind us why we get together in these fights. And I'm going to start with that one because it is so deeply personal to so many of us here. And that is, what do we believe in? What do we fight for? We believe that every kid in this country is entitled to get an education without being crushed by student loan debt. And that means debt-free college. We will do this. Yes. Yes. We believe that health care is not some frivolity available for the rich. It is a basic human right for every human being. Yes. And when we talk about how, once again, we are going to strengthen working families, how we're going to create opportunity for poor families, how we're going to have a solid middle class, I always remind myself, unions built America's middle class and unions will rebuild America's middle class. You bet we will. And when we're talking about dignity and fairness, I remind myself that after a lifetime of hard work, people are entitled to retire with a little dignity. And that means protecting and expanding Social Security and Medicare for all of our people. Yes. You know, I remind myself too, every time I come back from Washington, that we are a people where there is no room for dignity, see how I want to do this? We believe there is no room for bigotry, that we are a nation of immigrants, that Black lives matter, that we will be a people who stand for each other. Yes. You bet. God, I love to be from Massachusetts. You know, I want to say another one too, and I'm just always left on this. I cannot believe I have to say this in 2017. We believe that women should make their own health care decisions over their own bodies, and that Planned Parenthood will receive funding from the federal government. We will fight for them all the way. It's our health care. You bet. Are we ready? You bet. You bet. Okay, I got another one I got to say. I know. But I got another one I do have to say. And this one is a little scary for some people, so kind of reach over and hold your neighbor in a respectful way. Okay, you there? Okay, good. Okay, we're ready. This one really is a problem in Washington. I believe in science. You think? Yes. And because of that, I believe that climate change is real and we have a moral obligation to protect this earth for our children and our grandchildren. Yes. Okay, and one more. But it's true. You know, I watch what's going on right now with these Goldman Sachs guys, once again, running the economy. What could possibly go wrong?
Get them out.
Yeah, well, you know what we believe? We believe that Wall Street needs more regulation, not less regulation to wreck our economy. Do you believe in that? Yes. Yep. Okay, you know I could do this all night. But we got somebody else who's going to come talk. So let me just do one more. Because it wraps up so much of what's wrong in our country. And it reminds us so much of what we're fighting for. And that is, we believe that democracy is not for sale, that we must overturn Citizens United, and we must return this government to the people. And that's why I wanted to be here with my friend Bernie Sanders. Come on out, Bernie.
Thank you. Let me, on this beautiful spring evening, let me thank all of you for coming out. It's a great turnout. Let me thank Our Revolution for helping to organize the event. I thank Paul Feeney and Pablo Ruiz and Ashley Delver and Erica Scott Pacheco and Katura Brewster and Reverend Andy Belmer and Jose Palmer and Rand Wilson for all of their extraordinary remarks, giving us the reality of what's going on in America today. Thank you all. And let me thank the people of Massachusetts for sending Elizabeth Warren to the United States Senate. You can tell the quality of a person by the enemies she makes. And to her credit, Elizabeth Warren has made some wonderful enemies. And those folks, the people on Wall Street, and the people in the insurance industry, and the people in the pharmaceutical industry, and the people in the fossil fuel industry, they want to make sure that Elizabeth does not come back to the Senate. Our job is to make sure not only that she wins, but that she wins big. That's your job. Let's do it. Brothers and sisters, we are engaged in a war tonight of monumental proportions. And what that war is about is that the top 1%, the billionaire class, people who have more wealth and income that they will be able to spend in a dozen lifetimes, they are not satisfied. They want even more. Their greed is destroying this country, and tonight we tell them enough is enough. What our job is to bring our people together. Working people, people in the middle class, young people, old people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American. And together we are going to tell Mr. Trump and his friends, sorry, you are not going to divide us up. We are going to stand together. We're going to take you on. And not only are we going to take your ugly proposals on, we are going to go forward. We're going to transform this country. We're going to create an economy and a government which works for all of us, not just the 1%. Now, what the rigged economy is about, that Elizabeth Warren talks about, that I talk about, and at least one or two other people in Congress might mention, is an economy in which in the last 35 years we have seen a massive transfer of wealth. Now, my Republican colleagues, they get very nervous when we talk about redistributing wealth. They get nervous when we talk about taking from the rich and helping the middle class, but they got no problem when in the last 37, 38 years, trillions of dollars have left the pockets of working people and have gone to the top 1%. So we are telling them tonight and into the future, those days are over. You're going to stop ripping off the working families of this country. We have not only an economic crisis in terms of this grotesque level of wealth and income inequality, we have a profound moral crisis. As a nation, we have got to ask ourselves, is it acceptable that the top 1/10 of 1%, 1/10 of 1%, now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%? Is it acceptable that one family, the Walton family, and by the way, the Walton family, because so many of their employees in Walmart are on food stamps or in Medicaid or subsidized housing. Walton family, the wealthiest family in America, is also the largest welfare recipient. So we say to this Walton family, the wealthiest family, get off of welfare, start paying your workers a living wage. And when we look at a rigged economy, it is not only this grotesque distribution of wealth, it is also an unfair distribution of income. Today in Boston, today in Burlington, Vermont, you got people who are working not one job, they're working 2 jobs, they're working 3 jobs. Today in America, as a result of the collapse of the American middle class, you have millions of people working 50 or 60 hours a week in order to put food on the table for their kids. In fact, we work some of the longest hours of any people in the industrialized world. Mom is out working, dad's working, the kids are out working. But at the end of the day, 52% of all new income is going to the top 1%. Our job, brothers and sisters, is to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the billionaire class. Running for president gave me the opportunity and the privilege of going all over this country. And I want to thank the many of you here for the support you gave me. Running for president took me to Detroit, Michigan, where I sat in a room with young workers, mostly African American, who are making $7.25 an hour, working at Walmart's, and they couldn't even get 40 hours a week. They had to work 20 hours here, 20 hours there, 20 hours there. And what I learned then is that 7.25 is a starvation wage. We're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And in the campaign, from coast to coast, I talked to parents and single moms who are working so hard to improve life for their kids. And you talk to a single mom who's maybe doing okay. She's making $35,000, $40,000, $45,000 a year. But in order to find quality child care for her little one, she has to spend $10,000 or $15,000 a year. Now, how in God's name can you afford to spend $15,000 a year on childcare when you're making $40,000 a year? Every psychologist who studies the issue understands that the most important years of a human being's life are 0 to 4. Those are the years in which children develop intellectually and emotionally. So I don't want to hear any more talk about family values from my Republican colleagues. Until we pass universal, affordable child care for every family in this country. This is the year 2017, and you know what? Women should not be earning 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. Equal pay for equal work. When we talk about a collapsing American middle class, what we are talking about is the fact that 100 years ago, workers in Boston, throughout this country, they were out on the streets. And you know what they were saying? They were saying, we are human beings. We are not beasts of burden. We do not want to work and work and work. We want leisure time. We want time for our families. We want time for education. We want time for vacation. 100 years have come and gone. Technology has exploded so that every worker here tonight is far more productive, producing a lot more than workers did years ago. And yet today, 100 years after workers demanded a 40-hour work week, the average worker is working 46 hours a week, and millions of people are working 50 or 60 hours a week. There are people in Boston, people in Vermont, people all over this country who have jobs that do not guarantee them any vacation time. That is going to change. We want an economy that works for people, not an economy in which people are forced to give up their humanity, to sacrifice their kids in order to make a living. As Elizabeth mentioned a moment ago, we live in a highly competitive global economy. It is virtually insane for any person in this country who loves this country, who is concerned about the future of this country, not to be absolutely outraged by the fact that today, hundreds of thousands of bright young kids, kids who did well in high school, kids who want to go to college, they are unable to do so because of the income of their families. And then on top of that, we have millions of people who have graduated college, $50,000, $60,000 in debt, graduated graduate school, medical school, dental school, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, are spending decades paying off those debts, can't buy a home, can't have kids, they're paying off those debts. Our job is to encourage our people to get the best education they can, not punish them for doing that. And that is why on Monday, with many, many students from all over the country, I will be introducing legislation to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and and legislation, same legislation will substantially reduce student debt, something that Elizabeth and I have both been working on. Now people say, well, Bernie, you know, it's an expensive proposition. You want to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, you want to lower student debt. It costs a lot of money, and it's true, it does. How are we going to pay for it? I will tell you exactly and gleefully how we're going to pay for it. We're going to put a tax on Wall Street speculation. And when we make public colleges and universities tuition-free, it not only helps, obviously, the people in college and the people who graduated, it does something perhaps even more importantly. I grew up in a family, my parents never went to college. And the people we associated with, my family associated, they never went to college. And all over this country today, you have kids growing up in poverty, working class kids. They don't know anybody who went to college. What I want is for every kid in this country in the 6th grade, I want for their parents, I want their teachers to know that if those kids do well in the 6th grade and the 8th grade and in college and in high school, yes, regardless of their incomes, they will be able to get a college education and make it into the middle class. That is revolutionary. Elizabeth is exactly right when she says we defeated this disastrous, disgusting Republican, Trump, Ryan healthcare proposal because millions of people stood up. They went to town meetings, they went to rallies in Boston, in Burlington, all over this country. They bombarded the phone lines of my colleagues in Washington. These guys couldn't do business, the phone lines were so. And some of you may have seen on TV these town meetings, Republicans hold town meetings, and usually they would have, 40, 50 people coming, talking about how you got to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Suddenly they opened the door and 1,000 people were there. And they weren't there to talk about repealing the Affordable Care Act. A man gets up, I can't remember where it was, and this guy says, and he looks at the congressman, and he says, if you repeal the Affordable Care Act, my wife is going to die, and I am not going to allow you to do that. So don't kid yourself. No matter what they will tell you in the media or on television, the reason that we prevented them from repealing the Affordable Care Act is because all over this country we stood up and we fought back. But our job is not just to prevent the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and it is not just to improve the Affordable Care Act, which in fact has many problems. Deductibles are too high, co-payments are too high, cost of prescription drugs are too high. Too many people don't have access to primary care. Our job is to join the rest of the industrialized world, guarantee health care to all people as a right. And our job, and I'm going to introduce this legislation within the month, is to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. Please don't tell me that if Canada can guarantee health care to all of their people at about half the cost per capita, if the United Kingdom can guarantee health care to all of their people, if Germany can do it, and Denmark, and Holland, and Sweden, if every major country on earth guarantees health care to all people and costs a fraction per capita of what we spend, don't tell me that in the United States of America, we cannot do that. The Republican Party and Mr. Trump, they have a brilliant idea regarding tax reform. They think that the rich are not rich enough. They want to provide, at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks for the top 1%. At a time when major corporations, in some cases, do not pay a nickel in federal income tax because they stash their profits in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda and other tax havens, they think these corporations need even more tax breaks. Well, we have a slightly different perspective. And our point of view is that billionaires like Donald Trump should start paying their fair share of taxes. In case you forgot, there was an election in November, and Donald Trump won. And I want to say a word about that. I want to say a word about that. And not everybody here will agree with me, but I want to tell you what I think. Some people think that the people who voted for Trump are racists and sexists and homophobes and just deplorable folks. I don't agree. I don't agree, because I've been there. And let me tell you something else which some of you may not agree with. And that is, it wasn't that Donald Trump won the election, it was that the Democratic Party lost the election. And let us understand what's going on. It's not just the White House that they won. They control the United States Senate. They control the United States House. They control almost 2/3 of governors' chairs. And in the last 8 years, Democrats have lost 900 legislative seats all over this country. Now, this is what we have got to put on the table, and we got to ask ourselves, how does it happen when we are competing against a right-wing extremist party who has an agenda that most Americans soundly and roundly disagree with, an agenda that wants to give tax breaks to billionaires, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut Medicaid, doesn't believe in climate change, doesn't believe in pay equity for women? How in God's name do they win elections? And the reason is, in my view, that the time is long overdue for fundamental restructuring of the Democratic Party. We need a Democratic Party which is not the party of the liberal elite, but a party of the working class of this country. We need a party which is a grassroots party, a party where candidates are talking to working people, not spending their time raising money for the wealthy and the powerful. And when we do that, when we transform the Democratic Party, we transform America, because on every, and this is an important point, on every major point facing this country, the American people do not believe in a right-wing agenda. They believe in a progressive agenda. We got to take that agenda to the people. The American people believe overwhelmingly we raise the minimum wage to a living wage. They believe in pay equity for women. They believe in rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. They believe in a trade policy that works for workers and not just CEOs. They believe in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel. They believe in fixing a broken criminal justice system, a system that has more people in jail, disproportionately African American, Latino, Native American, than any country on earth. Our job, our policy has got to be to create jobs for our young people, not more jails, not more detention centers. And the American people do not believe that we should be throwing millions of undocumented people out of this country, people who have been here for years, working hard, raising their kids. The American people believe in comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. So we have got to get our hands dirty. We got to get out on the streets. We got to be knocking on doors. We got to be registering people, many of whom have given up in the political process. And by the way, the Democratic Party cannot any longer afford to be a party of New England, a party of the West Coast. We got to be a 50-state party. I want you to think about something for a moment. Just think about how absurd where we are is. In Kentucky, a state that benefited as much as any other state through the Affordable Care Act, where hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes for the first time in their life, got health insurance. The leader of the Republican Party in Washington is working overtime to try to take away that health insurance from his own people. And the other senator, Rand Paul, thinks that Mitch McConnell hasn't gone far enough. Now, how do they get away with that stuff? They get away with that stuff because A, they think nobody knows what's going on, the media doesn't report it, and B, more importantly, they believe that the Democrats offer no opposition. They could do any damn thing they want to do. Well, our job is to start providing that opposition in Kentucky, in Mississippi, in Alabama. And they're going to have to look in the eyes and meet those people at the polling booths who they think they can throw off of health care or not raise the minimum wage or not provide decent jobs to their people. That's what we have to do, coast to coast. So our job is A, we've got to beat back this incredible reactionary agenda, an agenda developed by people like the Koch brothers, an agenda which is accelerated by this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And we're going to rally the American people, and we're going to say, no, we're not going to spend $80 billion more on the military when you cut programs for children or the elderly and the poor. But what we also have got to do is not just play defense. You don't win games playing defense. We got to get on the offense. And we have to have a vision that appeals to people, and with people stand up and fight the greed of the 1% and of corporate America and of Wall Street. And that vision is, we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We're going to have pay equity for women. We're going to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure and create 13 million decent paying jobs. We're going to have trade policies that benefit workers and not just the wealthy. We're going to create jobs by transforming our energy system from fossil fuel to solar and wind and geothermal. We're not going to be firing teachers. We're going to be hiring teachers. Trump and his billionaire friends are going to start paying their fair share of taxes. That's our agenda, and that is an agenda that will appeal to people from Kentucky to California to Massachusetts. All right. So our job, it seems to me, is to get involved in the political process in a way that we have never been involved before. Despair is not an option. And I have not the slightest doubt, that when we stand up and we educate and when we organize and when we grow the union movement, when we stand together, it's not going to be a victory for us, it's going to be a rout. I understand well that they got the money, and you're going to see that money pouring into Massachusetts against Elizabeth and other progressives. And that's going to be going on all over the country. Yeah, they got the money, but we have the people. And our job is to organize those people. And when we do that, and brothers and sisters, we can, when we do that, we are going to create the nation that all of us know that we can become. We can do it. Thank you all very much.